Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to U.S. Government with Mr. Shaw. Usually I have another teacher here, Miss Wilbrand. I'm going to see if I can convince her to join me for Unit 2, but for Unit 1, you're stuck with me. And by stuck with me, I mean, well, you're going to have a great time. Guys, we're going to do all kinds of stuff this year, but this is really going to be the meat and potatoes of what we learn is via video, and you guys are just going to be crushing this year. You're going to dominate the EOC, I have no doubt. Again, so Unit 1, Foundations of American Government. Guys, quick reminders. I would definitely remove as many distractions as you can right now. I know you're in class watching this, but I would make sure your phone's away. I'd make sure it's on silent. Okay, turned off even might even be better for you, to be honest, because that is going to help you to be more successful when we are doing these videos. Again, make sure you're taking notes. Make sure you guys are like starring anything that you might have questions on. All that stuff is going to make you guys be more successful with these videos, okay? If something doesn't make sense, make sure you pause it, rewind, listen again, okay? All that stuff. Again, and I remember I'm in class. I'm right there to, you can probably see me right now. Wave to me right now. It'd be hilarious, okay? And just, again, I'm here to help, but that's the thing. You want to make sure you go back and you watch that first before you have even asked me a question, okay? Because you can probably figure it out if you watch it a second time. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. This is Unit 1, Foundations of American Government. Today we are going to be talking about citizenship and participation, mostly focusing on citizenship. So, big question, what does it mean to be a citizen of the United States? Later on this week, we are going to have a discussion post where we really dive deep into this topic of what does it mean to be a citizen, or what does it mean to be a good citizen, rather. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you guys are learning about citizenship in the United States, and we'll answer that later. All right, so a citizen in the United States, being a citizen means being a member of a country and having full rights and responsibilities under that country's law. Now, one thing, there's really there's two types of citizens, or two types of people in a country. There's citizens and then non-citizens. Okay, and then the non-citizens have, especially in America, they enjoy the same rights that we have. They have some of the same responsibilities, but they're missing a couple key things. Number one, they can't vote. Number two, they can't run for office or hold office or anything like that. But again, they're we'll get into kind of the differences later, but that's the biggest difference is that they have no power over what happens in this country, or who is, going to be elected to the government. So who is a citizen? Okay, so there's two ways to be a citizen. The first one is to be born in America or born to American parents. So born in America is actually a really broad term. You can be born in any of the 50 states. You can also be born on any of the naval bases that we have, or military bases around the world. Any embassies, that would be a really rare one. But if you're born on an embassy, a U.S. embassy, that also counts as being an American citizen. And then the other one is that if you're born to American parents. And so if either one of your parents are an American citizen by the time you're born, boom, you're automatically an American citizen. So pretty cool, right? The next up is naturalization. So naturalization is a big fancy word for the process by which non-citizens may earn citizenship status. So my wife is from Peru. Her family is from Peru. She was not born here, and when they immigrated here, they had to go through the steps to naturalization that we'll talk about later. And so they are natural. Like I was born here. I was born in St. Louis. So I am a by birth citizen. And now my wife and her parents are naturalized citizens. Okay. Same rights and responsibilities. Same. We're equal in every other way. It's just, we just kind of went about citizenship in a different way. I didn't have to work for it really. And then they did, essentially. Okay, so what is expected of U.S. citizens? Okay, number one is allegiance. Okay, allegiance means sworn loyalty. In this case, we're talking about the United States and to our Constitution. This is punishable by law, and that's called treason. If you do something that can harm the United States in any way, like if you're selling, atomic bomb secrets or something like that, or you try to, cause harm to a government official like that. These are examples of treason. And and you would be put in prison for that. Patriotism is another thing. Again, it's expected. And what's funny about patriotism is that it looks different for everybody. The patriotism is a feeling of pride or a bond between yourself and your country. And every country has patriots and patriotism, but it's interesting because patriotism looks different for a lot of different people. I mean, some people might say that it's having the flag outside of your house or attached to your car or something like that, and others are going to show their patriotism by peacefully protesting and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can show that patriotism, and you just need to keep that in mind. Patriotism, though, is not punishable unless it gets, unless you do something illegal while you are trying to be patriotic. So just be careful there. All right, so the rights of a citizen. Again, rights are unalienable freedoms to which a citizen is entitled and may freely exercise. So we find many of our rights, not all of them, but a lot of them, in our Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. You guys I'm sure you're very familiar with a lot of them, such as the First Amendment with freedom of speech and freedom of the press, Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, all kinds of stuff like that. Again, these are guaranteed to all people. Again, you notice that it doesn't say citizens there. It's guaranteed to all people in the United States. And so this is, again, as I mentioned, it includes freedom of speech, religion, assembly, etc. There's a ton of different rights that we have, and we'll talk about those more in Unit 3. Citizenship, and so again, just to clarify, we're talking about all people get those rights in America, not just citizens, okay? So like, for example, even if you are a non-citizen, as long as you're here legally, you have freedom of speech. So that's just a really important note to be aware of. So citizenship rights are rights exclusively for citizens. And I mentioned some of these before: voting, running for political office, serving on a jury. I know that's really more of a responsibility rather than a right. But again, people can't serve on juries, which means that they cannot help to, issue justice or protect justice. So that's pretty important. Okay, so responsibilities of citizens. So for responsibilities, I want you to think these are something that you should do, okay? You should do, but you're not going to get punished if you don't. Okay, so for responsibilities are freedoms which citizens are encouraged to exercise in order to form a more perfect union. You might underline that word encouraged. Again, you're not going to get punished if you don't do these. Some examples include voting, such as casting ballot. That means casting your ballot in local, state, and federal elections. Educating yourself, informing yourself and others about current events. Engaging, that means participating and becoming involved with your community. Observing and respecting the rights and property of others, and listening and understanding and respecting the rights of others. Okay, so again, these are things that you should do. Now, again, with the last two, we talked about observe and listen. When you talk about rights of others, if you infringe upon the rights of others, that is punishable. Most responsibilities, though, are not really punishable by law. Like if you don't vote, like the police aren't going to knock down your door. That's a responsibility you have. It's not a duty. It's not a requirement. Whereas when we talk about duties, and on the next slide, I believe it's the next slide, it is, these are going to be punishable if you don't follow them. Okay. So duties are required actions of all citizens in order to promote the health and wellness of our country. So the failure to fulfill these requirements is punishable under the law. So I would go ahead and underline required here. That's the biggest difference between a duty and a responsibility. And when you're thinking about this, like on the quiz or the test, again, you want to think, okay, is this required or encouraged, or am I going to get punished or not? Am I going to jail if I don't do this? So some examples of duties include abide by the laws. All local, state, and federal laws must be followed. The selective service, this is required to register for the military in case of a draft. This applies to men who are 18 and older, although recently there have been some pushes to include women in the selective service. Jury service, these are participating in the trials and determining innocence or guilt of peers. Paying taxes, pay local, state, and federal taxes to fund public programs and projects, and then education, required attendance to a state-accredited school for a certain time. So, for example, that last one, Missouri, if you decided to leave school before you were 17, again, that's illegal. You can't do that. You're supposed to, you're supposed to be in school for that whole time. So how can someone become a U.S. citizen? Now, this is where we're going to talk about naturalization. So when we get to it, again, the path to citizenship, again, I already talked about the birth one. So again, at birth, you're either born in the U.S. territory, subject to its jurisdiction, or parent, or, oh, and I'm sorry, so that includes territories. So like, for example, Puerto Rico or Guam are U.S. territories. So if you're born in Puerto Rico, technically you do have U.S. citizenship. And then I mentioned the parent or parents who were citizens at the time of your birth. If you were born abroad, again, so like if you were born in Germany, but like your mom or dad were already U.S. citizens, then you're still good to go. You're still a citizen. Okay, again, the immigration and naturalization, again, you have to legally immigrate to the United States. You can't come here illegally. We'll talk about illegal immigration in a little bit. You have to accumulate 5 years of permanent residency. You have to basically pay a fee in order to be here legally. I'm sorry, in order to get your permanent residency, you have to pay a fee. I think it's like $800 or something like that. And then you are now going to be a permanent resident for those 5 years. And then after those 5 years, you can apply for your actual citizenship and complete the naturalization process. Okay, so a couple different steps to earn your citizenship status. Step one is qualifying for permanent residency. As I just mentioned, you have to find a U.S. sponsor, and it could be a family, an employer, or a university. Again, like for example, like like my wife and her parents, their sponsor was family, like that they already had here. But if you got a job, say a really good job with Boeing, but you were not a U.S. citizen, they could sponsor you to come to the United States and work here legally, and then be able to get your permanent residency and then your citizenship. Same thing for a university. Again, you can also be an investor if you invest $1 million into a business creating at least 10 jobs. That is a way to qualify for permanent residency. Must be nice to be rich. And then you can also be a refugee or an asylee, which is where you are seeking safety within the U.S. Again, great example right now is the Afghanistan citizens that are fleeing because the Taliban took over Afghanistan. They are coming here legally, and they are going to be able to apply for, or they're going to qualify for permanent residency because of their status. Now, again, they're not necessarily and here's the thing that stinks, for a lot of people, is that when you are qualifying, you're like earning this, qualifying for permanent residency, it matters kind of like what you bring to the table. So if you're a doctor and you are going to be able to like help, cure cancer or something like that, you're going to get your permanent residency really fast. But like if, you are just maybe, I don't know, just an average Joe, and you really weren't going to, we weren't going to really contribute very much, you're going to be able to get your permanent residency still. You just might have to wait a little bit longer. Okay, so step 2 is going to be the full citizenship requirements. You have to live and work in the U.S. for 5 years as a legal permanent resident. That's what LPS means. And you have to acquire proficient literacy in English and then maintain good moral character. So a couple things with that. Again, you have to make sure that you are when you are acquiring proficient literacy, you have to be able to talk and write in English. And again, and they're not expecting you to like get rid of your accents or anything like that. But that is just part of it. You're going to need to make sure you're gaining that literacy in English. And then maintaining good moral character, that really means just not committing any crimes. Again, you want to be really careful, not getting any even speeding tickets or parking tickets would be really, it's not going to look good necessarily. Again, obviously that's way different from murdering somebody. Like obviously if that happens, you're not going to be able to get your citizenship. But even like speeding tickets can hinder your ability to get that full citizenship requirement. And then the last part is to complete the naturalization process. So you have to submit all documentation. You have to pay the filing fee, which is, again, like another $800. You have to go through a background check. You're going to get interviewed with an immigration official. You have to take a civics and literacy test. Again, you guys are actually going to take, you guys took the citizenship test when you were freshmen, and it's that same test. Okay, it's the exact same, and they just have to know, who George Washington was, and who did we fight in World War II, and things like that, and what are the holidays. All that stuff, it fits into the civics and literacy test. And then after you've done all that, finally you get to go to a naturalization ceremony, and you're going to take the oath of allegiance, and you're going to say that you are now going to be loyal to the United States. I've been to two ceremonies, and they are really, really cool. I highly recommend it if you guys get a chance to go to see a citizenship ceremony. It's really, really cool. So high marks, 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so one last contemporary connection, and then I'm going to stop. I want to go ahead and I want to talk a little bit about undocumented immigrants. So an undocumented immigrant is an immigrant lacking proper authorization to be in the United States. So there's 2 ways to become an undocumented immigrant. The first way is if you enter the country without following immigration procedures. That's very rare, or that's actually much, much rarer than you would think. The main way that people become undocumented is if they're going to be issued a temporary visa, and then they stay past their expiration date. So most undocumented immigrants come here legally, and then they overstay their visas, and then that is how they get to where they're at. So again, life undocumented is really difficult, and so there's really no pathway to citizenship if you're undocumented. You get minor federal benefits such as again, education, emergency care, etc. But it's just there's really not. You're not enjoying the full benefits of being a U.S. citizen, or even just a legal immigrant. Consequences for illegal immigration: again, if you're in here for if you're 6 months undocumented, you will get deported, and there's a 3-year wait for an application for a visa. And then if you are caught over a year being undocumented, you're also deported, and it's a 10-year wait for your application for your visa. So these are, again, I just wanted to kind of give you, I don't want you to write this. This is just kind of giving you an idea of kind of where we're at right now. So there's 2 things to talk about is the DREAM Act and then DACA. So the DREAM Act and Dreamers, this has been circulating for about 19 years. And it has not become law. This would offer certain undocumented immigrants legal resident status in the U.S. and a pathway to citizenship. This is only for people who have entered the U.S. They would have had to rather enter the U.S. legally before the age of 16, live in the U.S. for 5 continuous years, be good upstanding residents, and have earned or are on track to earn a high school diploma or a GED. So this is for young people whose parents brought them over as undocumented immigrants, and they really didn't have a choice in their undocumented status. So the DREAM Act would help fix that. And again, it hasn't been passed into law yet, so it's not really helping anybody at this point. DACA, that refers to Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Again, this is the same kind of deal. This is an executive order that was passed by Obama in 2012, and basically the Dreamers were protected from deportation because of this executive order. They needed to obtain a work permit, receive a driver's license, and attend college. And it was dependent on maintaining good behavior, and they must renew their status every 2 years. So again, DACA is in force, still, it's difficult to kind of overturn that. But that is kind of, again, the last thing, sorry, so you must have been younger than 30 when the policy was signed into action in order for it to apply to you. So it's kind of tough. Again, like the real question is really what do you do with kids? The kids that are coming over, they don't really have a choice in their status. And so it puts the United States in a really tough position because technically they were not here legally. They did not come here legally. But we have seen kind of people to start taking steps, government officials take steps to try to remedy that. Guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out for our very first government video. There's plenty more where that came from. Guys, I'll catch you in the next one.